I don't care what you people say about Terrence Crawford for the rest of his career. In my opinion, that dude is a juice monster. I just saw him working out ahead of the Canelo Alvarez fight. The dude looks like Hulk fucking Hogan. Nigga, get off that shit before it kills you. Jesus Christ, bro. You got arrow with it? Cool. Stop doing the shit. You're overdoing it, bro. Don't nobody believe this shit. You look like a goddamn NFL linebacker, nigga, jumping the ropes with weights on your vest. Nigga, you look like a juice monster. Fuck off, Terrence Crawford. I don't believe shit about your career. Personally, I don't believe a fucking thing about your career because you look like a fucking steroid monster trying to cheat Canelo Alvarez. Who's a steroid monster? Cheating on cheating on cheating.
What's going on, you guys? So I just got done watching a Fannon boxing YouTube video, right, where he's accusing Terrence Crawford of being on performance-enhancing drugs, right? And this isn't the first dummy that's came out and said something along those lines, but for Fannon Boxing to come out and say these things, it's not necessarily a surprise. Fannon Boxing has been a Terrence Crawford hater for probably close to a decade now. So it's not surprising for him to come out and say these things, right? But I want to get into a lot of the stuff that he said in his videos, right? Now, the first thing that he said was Earl Spence put out a tweet some time ago talking about how it's amazing how fighters can be gone from the sport of boxing, you know, for 2 years, juice up, and then when it gets close to them signing for a fight, they taper off, right? And I'm sure that is common in the sport of boxing, you know, and it's kind of funny that he said that some time ago, and now it's been 2 years since he's fought, and he's recently put out some pictures and some videos of him looking completely ripped out of his mind, and now he's in conversations to fight Sebastian Fundora, right? I find that pretty funny that he said that some time ago, and that whole situation may look like it's going to happen for Earl Spence, right? I mean, Earl Spence has been suspected of using PEDs for some time now, but he's never tested positive, so I can't say he has. But when you have gyno for pretty much your whole career, then, I mean, that's kind of a telltale sign, right? But nonetheless, Fannon Boxing tried saying that that tweet was about Terrence Crawford. Fannon Boxing is a dummy, and I think that's a pretty bad interpretation of that tweet. You know, a pretty bad assumption, because Terrence Crawford doesn't take 2-year layoffs. He takes probably a year layoff. I mean, the last time we saw him was last August when he fought Madrimov, right? So we haven't seen Terrence Crawford take a 2-year layoff. We've seen Earl Spence take a 2-year layoff, though. But moving on, right? So he said, Fannon Boxing said he watched some of the recent videos that Terrence Crawford's put out about his training, right? His strength and conditioning training, him jumping rope with a weighted vest on, and so on and so forth, and saying, you know, he just looks like a juice monster right now. He looks like an NFL linebacker, which is pretty funny because, I mean, NFL linebackers are probably like 250 pounds, you know, well over 6 foot, but Terrence Crawford is probably like a 5'8", 170-something pound dude. And the videos that he's talking about, he doesn't necessarily look ripped out of his mind. You know, I dropped a couple YouTube shorts on his physique, you know, on him training and stuff like that, and he doesn't look humongous. He looks bigger, but he doesn't look like solid, ripped, you know, anything like that. A lot of people have actually been saying he looks soft, you know. But that just goes to show this dude's a dummy. And moving on, he said it's humanly impossible for a man that is 36 years old, that weighs 147 pounds, to put on 20 pounds of solid muscle in the course of 2 years. But what this idiot doesn't understand is, in modern day boxing, these guys aren't fighting at their walk-around weights, right? Terrence Crawford's last fight, he fought at 154 pounds. He weighed in at the scale like a 153. And the next day he came in at like 170. So these dudes are rehydrating after they, you know, hit the scales for their weigh-in. So this dude is a complete idiot for saying that Terrence Crawford was a 36-year-old man that weighed 147 pounds. He may have fought at that weight, but he gained quite a bit of weight the next day because these dudes rehydrate. That's why you see Devin Haney, who was a 135-pounder, that would rehydrate up to 160. That's why you see him now getting ready to fight Brian Norman Jr., and he looks like the bigger guy. You seen Jarrett Hurd fight at 154, and he'd come into the ring looking like a cruiserweight. So this guy's just a dipshit. He clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just trying to bash on Terrence Crawford because he's a bitter hater. But that wasn't the only thing, right? He went on to say that the science, the quote unquote science of today, right, allows these guys to fight way longer. Now, when he says science, he's referring to certain fighters, Terrence Crawford, using PEDs to last longer in the sport. Not keeping in mind that, the activity of fighters today is a lot different than the activity of fighters back in the 70s, the 60s, and so on and so forth. These guys are fighting maybe once a year. But this dummy wants to say that the science is the reason why Crawford is 38 years old and fighting at a high level, too. As if we haven't seen this, right? We haven't seen Muhammad Ali fight from 1960 to 1981. We haven't seen Floyd Mayweather fight from 96 to 2017. We haven't seen Roberto Duran fight from like 68 all the way to 2001. And there's been a grip of other fighters that have fought for a very long time in their career. But Terrence Crawford fighting for as long as he has at a high level, it's clear signs that he's on PEDs, right? But what he's referred to as the science that's helping these guys, Terrence Crawford, fight as long as they have, is the snack program. Clearly they're cheating because he's a part of snack. But you don't ever hear anything about Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, not Regis Prograde, but Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Plant, Sean Porter, all these dudes that were affiliated with snack. We never heard anything about them using steroids. It's only been Terrence Crawford, and that whole thing started because he destroyed Earl Spence Jr., right? But the reason they want to say he's on steroids is because Victor Conti is the head of snack, right? And we all know Victor Conti, got caught up in the Balco situation some years ago and did his time in prison, right? And since then, he's came back and he's tried to be a betterment of the sport of boxing, right? That's why you see organizations like VADA and so on and so forth pick him up, because he's a genius, right? And they want to use him as an asset to help catch other cheaters. And that's what Victor Conte's been. He's been an asset to VADA. He's not the head of VADA, he's not the one doing the testing. He's just an asset to them. And we don't only see this in the sports world. We see this with just criminals who were geniuses, right? And have been used by other organizations to help them catch other, criminals. It's not uncommon to see this happen. But since it's Terrence Crawford, they want to throw him, in there and try to, put him down and make him seem like he's a drug cheat. But in reality, he's not. He's never been tested positive for a steroid or anything like that. So it is what it is. But what's funny is these guys are now saying that he's using steroids ahead of this fight, and he's fighting Canelo Alvarez, who is an actual drug cheat. But that's not getting talked about at all. In fact, there's been 7 different fighters who have been caught using steroids in Canelo's camp, but we don't hear anything about that. Mainstream media doesn't pick that up. We don't really hear that in, the boxing, channels on YouTube or anything like that. I'm sure Fannon Boxing probably hasn't even dropped a video on that because it's Terrence Crawford that he's going to be getting ready to fight. So Fannon Boxing is a complete dummy. He's just a bud hater, He's been a bud hater for, close to a decade, And ever since Terrence Crawford beat up on his boy, Earl Spence, I'm sure his YouTube channel's taken a hit, because that's all this dude talked about while, is Earl Spence. That's all this dude is really, his channel was based off of. It was based off of him hating on Bud, saying that, oh, Bud is he's ducking Earl Spence. He doesn't want to fight Earl Spence. He's not a star. He's just the B-side. He should just take whatever bullshit deal that PBC offers him because he's not a big attraction, right? That's all we heard for 5 to 6 years before we got the fight. And all we've heard since then is just a grip of excuses as to why Earl Spence got destroyed. One of them was, this conversation we're having right now with him being on steroids. The other ones were, oh, he just wasn't the same. He was weight drained. His eyes, weren't the same. He had a major eye surgery. He got into major car accidents, and he smoked weed before he fought. Just a grip of excuses as to why he got destroyed in that fight. That's all we've heard. But when he fought Yordenis Ugas and stopped him to pick up the third belt, everyone was saying, oh, this is the best Errol Spence we've ever seen. But when he gets destroyed by Crawford, all the excuses come. And what happened with Fannon Boxing after that is he had no choice but to just continue to hate on Terrence Crawford. He couldn't eat his crow because he's a punk. And since then, immediately after that fight, we've seen him try to switch the narrative to Terrence Crawford ducking John Boots Ennis. And if you look at John Boots Ennis today, this dude's ducking smoke from 140 pounds all the way up to 154. He hasn't fought one notable name, and he's going close to 30 years old. This was the dude that they tried saying was the next Terrence Crawford. This is the dude that Terrence Crawford was avoiding, right? But, okay, yeah, he ducked John Boots Ennis. All right, whatever. But it's just amazing to me that these YouTube channels, they cling on to these fighters and they make up just a group of excuses. And Errol Spence wasn't the only name that he dropped in this video. He brought up Deontay Wilder and how he got cheated against Tyson Fury, right? And if you really think Tyson Fury cheated against Deontay Wilder, I think you're an idiot. I think you're a complete moron. Because there was no proof that he actually cheated. There was plenty of boxers that came out during this whole scandal when it was happening, right? Or after it had happened. And they're like, dude, you would break your wrist trying to do that. There's no way he was cheating in that fight. But that wasn't the only thing we heard from, that fight as to why Deontay Wilder lost. We heard, oh, well, Mark Breland drugged him. He put something in his water. And then we also heard, Deontay Wilder said he came into the ring wearing a 50-pound vest that tired him out and blah, blah, blah. And Errol Spence, the same thing. All these groupie channels, they get on here and just make excuses for certain fighters that they like, promote, or whatever, or they get paid to talk about. It's just a complete joke. Fannon Boxing is a clown. I don't understand how anybody can watch this dude's channel. He's just a punk hater, And that's really all I have to say about this whole subject. I mean, I don't think Terrence Crawford is a drug cheat. Like I said, these videos that he's talking about, he doesn't necessarily look like a muscled up 190-pound dude. He looks kind of softer, and I imagine that as time goes on, he's going to look a little bit more ripped because he's going to have to cut weight. We're about a little less than 2 months away from this fight. And I just think he's had a year since he last fought to put on more weight, to get bigger, right? He doesn't have to cut as much weight since he's fighting at 168. So I think Terrence Crawford, being a disciplined fighter in the past, and still is, right? But when he was fighting at these lower weight classes, he maintained his weight and didn't exceed a certain amount. So that's why we haven't seen Terrence Crawford as big as we've have, recently. It's because he hasn't had to cut as much weight. So those are my thoughts on it. I don't think Terrence Crawford is cheating. I don't think he's, on PEDs like Fannon Boxing says. I think just Fannon Boxing is a complete clown, and he's just a hater. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Terrence Crawford is a drug cheat? Let me know. Hate, like, comment, subscribe.